Um, and so yeah, it was pretty rough weather yesterday, but now we all is good. Baruch Hashem.
And that Texas weather is kind of brutal a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it's not like so simple. You know what I mean? Like I mean,
Well, you know, it's there's one of the things is that Texas is so large
mhm,
that it covers like multiple regions. So
mhm.
you can yeah, I mean you can get just about everything in Texas. You can get flooding, you can get snowstorms, you can get uh forest fires. You can get I mean you can get it all because it's
Wow.
so large. And so it
Right.
seems like if I say Abilene, Texas, that's almost what 8 hours from me. And so
Wow.
there's parts of Texas that it'll take you about at least 10 to 12 hours to get from one point to the next. So
So if you travel from like one side of like parallel or whatever from one side of Texas to the other, it would like take days, like on a like driving.
it can take you like maybe I think let's say about 13 13 hours or so. Yeah, at least 13 hours. It's pretty stout.
I know from
And
LA to San Francisco is like 8 hours.
hold on, wait. Say that again.
Like from the drive from Los Angeles to sorry, to drive from Los Angeles to San Francisco. It's like it's like 8 hour drive.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, or like
Okay.
San Jose, San Jose. I just remember because we had cousins that lived up there, so we would drive. And maybe the way we took, we went on the like we'll just drive the coast all the way up, and I think it's pretty. I think it's like 8 hours. I think I'm pretty sure it's like eight
Yeah.
hours.
Well, more than likely, then it might take you about a day to cross. Like if you're going from deep East Texas all the way to deep West Texas, you could potentially from the Panhandle down to like Brownsville, Texas, which is down at the bottom near Mexico.
Mm.
It could take you a good day or two. So it's I mean when we went to we visited San Diego a couple years ago, and it took us at least 8 or 9 hours just to get from Dallas to I think El Paso.
Wow,
Yeah, so it was pretty, and that's like half the journey. So you know that once we got out of Texas, the I mean it was pretty smooth sailing in.
wow,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, okay. So everybody, your whole crew's with us.
The risk is $4.99.
Yes, the risk.
Okay, cool. All right. So,
You can lose. I know.
okay. So like, the thing is, so our last few conversations, I've really been challenging a lot of like thoughts, right? But the thing is, I think sometimes when we talk about it from a, say, like from a black perspective, when we challenge, different social constructs, right, that we've been presented with, it sounds like, we're dissing it because that's part of the social construct, right? That that it's not good, it's not less, but it's the same thing for the concept of white, right? Like this whole concept, and in fact, the white concept is even more disconnected in certain ways because it's coming from this place of superiority, right? Because at least a person who sees themselves as like, somewhat subservient could transform or transcend that to God, right? You could transcend that to God and be like, you know what? I've been like the Jews, right? They went to 210 years of indentured servitude, right? Slavery, if you want to call it that. And they were in a certain social condition, right? And they suffered a lot. They went through a lot of difficulties. But those different aspects, when you look back on retrospects, were just like extreme purification, right? And that extreme purification was to ultimately be the vessels that brought, a big part of the vessels that brought down this light of the Torah, right? So when we're talking about, the concept, like that's, you could see that system works, right? But when the person is saying like, hey, I'm white, I'm superior, I have justified living in a reality where there is clearly inequities in front of me, right? Like I live in the world. I wake up every single day and I've done nothing, right? But the rules of this particular society says that I can make, say, 30 cents more on the dollar in income than this person. And then I'm able to maybe buy property. I'm able to give the illusion of created wealth, right? And so it's like, you look at that and you're just like, oh, okay, well, that's a heavy thing. You know what I mean? That's like a heavy thing to like wake up and live in the world where other people are subjected and even suffering to a degree, right? Because of a nonsensical, social construct that you didn't do anything to earn per se. You just by the definition of your skin tone, right? You have allowed yourself to disconnect from other human beings. So that's a very difficult situation, and that's a different type of a neshama. That's a different correction, right? Because that's like that type of situation is like, well, how do you get out of that, right? How do you get out of that? You know what I mean? And so I think that struggle is a large part of Donald Trump's movement, right? That MAGA movement is really a lot of those people whose ancestors were told that they were superior to other people, right? And they could subject other people, and it was okay to do it, right? I mean, they had lynching parties with cotton candy. Like, I mean, think about that level, bro. This is like 1800s. You know what I'm saying? Like they're having lynching parties, 1900s. Like what level of a soul is on that type of stuff? And on top of it, you got and on top of it, and on top of it, you have this you have wealth, right? You have wealth, you have power, you have influence, and you still want to have lynching parties. You want to just subject people, like you want to dominate over people. You want to beat them into submission, and you have wealth. You know what I'm saying? These people are not even a threat of taking it away from you. You're such a minority, right? They're not even a threat, right? But you have it inside of you to want to conquer and abuse and other really horrible things. So that's a different reality. Like when we take ourselves out of it and we just look at it for what it is, on a soul level, on a consciousness level, that's a tikkun I don't want to deal with. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to do. That is not my issue in this lifetime. You know what I mean? My issue in this lifetime is being subjected by those people and subjugated and brutalized. You know what I'm saying? So and now I'm getting higher tools that ultimately the protection comes from myself, right? Because the Torah says, like, because obviously I'm not a part of those souls. Obviously I'm not, right? But my ancestors couldn't even imagine that type of stuff. You know what I mean? They're coming in like, hey, hey, love, it's all good. You messed up. I forgive you. I forget. You know what I mean? That's our thing, right? So we're coming in like that, and it's just like, no, they're not holding like that. Not just by us. They went around the world on that spirit. You know what I mean? They went to different parts of the world and just killed millions of people and for the sake of resources, and they bought their cross and their white Jesus with them, and it's like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like that's just to me, that's a deep reality. You know what I mean? To like be a part of that, right? Like that's a really and even to this day they're holding by that spirit. You know what I mean? Like it's in them, though. Like they like really it's a big concept, like the whole level of consciousness of, you know, the person who defines himself as white. Why would you want that? Like you know what I'm saying? Like why would you? How could you justify that? Like if I was me, I would say, you know what? I'm starting a white removal movement. I'm removing myself from whiteness. What do I need to do? You know what I'm saying? That's where I'd be at, because that stuff is wicked. You know what I mean? So when we're critiquing the African American experience, it's not in lieu. It's not in like, oh, we need to get it right. No, we're in the best situation, right? And in order to see that, right, we have to move away from the construct that was created by, the people who define themselves as white. I'm just saying they called themselves that. I'm not, it's not racial, it's not anything. It's a social class. It's an attitude towards others. You know what I'm saying? It's an attitude or use it, because I see some people, they come to America, and I got cousins darker than them, and they're like, hey, I'm white. I'm like, damn, really? And they're like, yeah, I'm white. I was like, all right, okay, white man, I get it. But I mean, but he's darker than, you know what I mean? So it's just saying that, like, so what I'm saying is it's a social class. So if I walk into a society and say, hey, I'm white, so therefore I'm saying that I've accepted that there's another people called black or maybe brown, whatever, that I have more social privileges than, because I identify as this. That's it. That's what it is. Right? That's what it is. Right? So that is where they're at. Right? You got to wake up with that. I don't want any of that on me. Right? I'm not coming to any other country in the world. You don't see black people going to any other country in the world, other places, trying to subject people, in that type of way. You know what I mean? And so, America's grown, America's got better, America's healing, so things are getting better. But the point is, I'm still saying, when I'm critiquing the African American experience, or myself, because it's not, and me sharing this is to say, like, it's not just what I've learned. It's not like, okay, you read this book, you read that book, you know this, you read this halakha, you know this, you memorize that, boom, you can answer this question, boom, boom. Okay, is that what this is about? Absolutely not. Right? What this is about is, like, what has the Torah done for me as an African American man? Right? Like, what has it done for me, right? Number one, you got to keep in mind that I met the Rav and them in blessed memory. I was like 21, 22. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's when I met them. It was a few years out of high school, like, working for my dad. You know what I mean? So it was a very unique time in my life, right? So I met them when I was very, very young, right? And so the point is just saying that, like, you look at, like, Kanye West, right? Like, me and Kanye are like the complete opposites of each other. You know what I mean? Like, the complete opposites, meaning that, like, we come from the same shorish, right? Because the only way you could be opposite, there had to be some similarity at some point, right? So we come from a certain family background. So I mean, my parents were a little bit more progressive, but his mom's a professor, my mom's a professor. This type of thing. We raised with a lot of, freedom, confidence type of a thing. And so the direction he got pulled into was like the American dream, right? Like, he went out, he became a celebrity, he became a rock star. He married, or had beautiful, quote unquote, beautiful women. I'm just saying, quote unquote. That's the whole thing. He's wearing designer clothes. He's on TV. He has influence. All these things, right? Every single thing that literally billions of people on planet Earth dream about, right? Billions of people. What Kanye's, I mean, he's wilding out, like, with his whole, like, anti-Semitic stuff. But I'm just saying, in concept, he is the ultimate dream, right? And so you have him, right? He's a little older than me, and then you have me on the other side of that, right? Which, I came from that, right? I came from that reality of people with a lot of materialism, the whole thing. And I saw, because I was there, I was like, this is not a path to happiness. Now, it doesn't mean that I was so elevated that I was like, hey, I don't want to participate in the pleasure. Of course, I wanted to participate in the pleasure, right? All all the secular pleasures that come with having success, in the secular sense, business, this type of thing, right? So I saw that, but I saw it on such an intimate level that it was this like, like so many kids that I went to school with, like went to rehab and just crazy stuff, just growing up, and seeing that and just seeing the whole context. Like it was just a lot of like substance abuse growing up. Now I was into sports, right? So I never got into that, and my parents were Muslim, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like such a thing by me and my siblings, but nevertheless, I played football and, those guys were into that type of stuff, right? And so, and I got wild a few times myself. I'm not gonna say that. I mean, I got wild. I was cool. But the point is saying that you could justify it and say, hey, you know what? These people only made this much money, right? My parents, these people, okay, it's they made more money than other people, but they only make this much money. So if you make this amount of money, like the super level, then you're gonna be happy. Down here, nah, it's not there, right? So that's how you could justify it in the mind. And then so a few years out of high school, right? Because I started an internet company, the whole thing. A couple years out of high school, I run into the Kabbalah Center, right? And then at the Kabbalah Center, you got Madonna there, you got Demi Moore, you got Ashton Kutcher, you got what you call it, Adana Karen. You have these humongous people there, right? And you're just like, why are they here though? You know what I mean? I just met someone and came. I didn't know like about the whole like celebrity thing. But it's like, no, the whole concept by them, the reason why they were there was because they were there because, in essence, they're like, we have all these things and we're missing. Like, what's next in life? So the Kabbalah Center itself attracted a lot of people that were very successful people, right? And it was a very like kind of like expensive. It was like his like club, the Rob Berg, bless him, it was like his club of people around the world. It was huge. And I just watched it. I was like growing up watching him do. I'm like, wow, it's crazy. And then Yehuda became like a really good friend of mine, right? Just we randomly, and I started, giving him marketing ideas, whatever. The point is to say that it was a second dose of reality that the ultimate path cannot be materialism, right? Because now these people are on a supernatural level. Like Madonna's on a supernatural level. She's right in front of me, right, at a Shabbos table, trying to connect, right? So that you see that and you're just like, wait, this is crazy, right? This is crazy. Like and it's not just her, it's a bunch of these people. And you just look at this is crazy. Like they're all here for this, and then you start to realize that the ultimate game is to get to a place of purity. That's it. I'm telling you, like Chief Rabbi Pinchas, right? It's guys, it's rabbis like him, right? Mikubalim, these Kabbalists. They live in the old city, these types of things, these very like remote places up in the north, these types of things. And you think about it, these guys are beyond genius, like in terms of like brain power, capacity, all these things, right? And they're choosing to spend their life in a place of less resources and maximum devotion to the creator in that system. And it's like you're seeing that, right? You're seeing that, right? Like like that was like the third phase, right? It was like me coming to Israel, right? It was like seeing that. And it's like you see all these people, and it's like the ultimate gain is purity, right? How can we get ourselves in a place of being as connected to the creator and as far away from the ego as possible, right? Is removing from selfishness and ego and being as close to the creator as possible in the frame of still doing work. No, I'm not saying like, there's no, you figure out a way, you got to toil in the field. You know what I mean? It's part of the Torah, agriculture, right? Shavuot, time of, the harvesting, right? And so, and so, that's the name of the game. It's not Elon Musk. It's not Donald Trump, right? It's not Yay, right? It's over here, right? it's over here. It's with the path of purity. That's what they're trying to get. They ultimately will want to get to that place. You know what I'm saying? They will ultimately get to that. They will get to a point, if they're lucky, that all the money, all the success, everything that they've ever accomplished, right, will be secondary to them connecting and doing one mitzvah in with purity, with kavana, to be able to go to a mikvah, right, to be able to resonate to the words of the Torah. That's a whole nother world. But all you get over there is these girls and drugs and parties and no Shabbos, no nothing, no mitzvahs, unkosher food, everything, nothing holy. That's what that whole world is over there. And then they're dressing it up. They're dressing it up and making it look like, if I can just get over there, if I could just get with the rich people, if I could just get on television, if I could just get on social media and get all these views, if I could just do that, I'm going to be happy. No, that's the lie. It's the wrong way. It's the wrong way. And that's the dilemma that we're dealing with. And that's what I'm saying. I'm the opposite of Kanye, because he went in that direction and I went in this direction. Right? And I'm sane. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're moving forward in this, right? He's on the decline, unfortunately, right? And, he should, but I mean, if there's no light there, why keep going up? Why get more famous? Why go out and do more things? Why not do that? You're going to be mad at what you have. Like, all this is a lie. This whole thing's a lie. And when you go on that path and you can't take a self-accountability, you always will end up on these conspiracy theories that lead you to Jews, and the same thing with black people. You know what I mean? Oh, it's the blacks are doing this and blah 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 blah. And so, anyways, I just want to just kind of like just lay that out, going into the study, because it's just a really important thing. Like, where's the Torah taking me to? Right. And that's why I have to look objectively, because I have to own that I'm a human being. Right. I have to own that concept. I have to own it. I have to own that I'm a human being, that I have a soul, I have flesh, the whole thing. Like, I have to own that idea, because that's what God said. Right. So if God said that I'm a human being, which is a soul and a body, and it's a perfect segue into, the study, you know, if he says that, that means that I have to critique myself from that perspective. But the world wants me to critique myself as a black human, right? But God never called me that. He never called nobody none of these things. They had tribe names, these things, but none of this. So you're asking me to critique reality with your corruption. And it's just like, no, I take that noose off of my neck. I take it off. It has no power. Peace, be gone. You have no more power. I'm a human being. Stop it. Stop. Okay, you got this black concept. You convinced us. You did it. Hocus pocus. You did white people. Went to white people. Hocus pocus. You're white. Hocus pocus. And we're like, okay, I'm white. Okay, I'm black. And you're black and you're supposed to live this way and you're white, supposed to live this way. Okay, I'm this way I'm supposed to live. This is what it is. And turn on television and we're going to show it to you over and over again. Okay, it's on television. And that's it. And you got a population of millions of people that agree on it. And then they convince another million group of people, because there's a thing called groupthink, right? Where if a thought is accepted by a certain amount of people, it becomes a reality. It's like the money. Right? If you look at Israeli money, it's like, bro, this is like monopoly money. No, this money is a serious thing here. In America, has very little value. So, anyways, it's just throwing these things out, because it's important, and we're going to go into the study, but it's important to have these frame of references when because sorry, hold on. Sorry. There you go. All right. So where we're at, we're okay. So we just did the introduction in the gates of purity, and So in essence, we know it's Rabbi Chaim Vital. I don't know, we didn't learn so much about him. We're not going to do it today. But, student of the Ari, really the Arizal's words right in front of him. And so we're learning the stuff. So we're starting, we did the introduction. So this is the beginning of the beginning. Okay. Okay, so it says Hayashar Rishon. So it's the first gate. So he says, gate one, he says, the blemishes caused by transgressing the mitzvahs of Hashem's Torah, right? So what happens on the deepest of deepest of deepest spiritual levels when we transgress one of God's commandments? How does this thing work, right? Because it's one thing to say, first of all, you do because you're told to do. Number one, right? That's the relationship with the parent and the child. The parent knows more than the child, so he says, "Don't stand over there." Okay, the child's like, "Why not?" Don't ask why not. Do it, right? Because that person has your best interest, right? So the person who made you has your best interest. So even more so, the creator of the universe, right? Who gave you the soul, right? So that's the idea of that. So, anyways, so. Okay, so he says like this. Okay, Askilit ve'romer kama gadol ra'at ha'adam. Okay, so he says like this. Let me instill in you with wisdom and enlightenment regarding the great damage that befalls a Jew who transgresses any of the 365 mitzvot Hashem forbid us from doing, or he separates himself and does not fulfill the 248 positive commandments that he has commanded us to do. So he's being like Big Papa like Logic. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna let you know what's going on. So the thing is like this. God says that there's 248 things you have to go towards to connect to the light. Hashem's light, right? That when the Torah says it says Vayomer Elohim Ve'ahi Or, that concept, that light, this is what we're connecting to. That verse, third verse in the Torah, that light that emanates from that existence, that manifestation on planet Earth, that light is what we're connecting to, right? All the mitzvahs are connected, and through that light, we're connected to the endless world, the Sof, the endless reality, right? Because God is beyond logic, beyond physicality. We know that, right? So God says there's 248 things that we got to go and connect to, right? We have to do these particular things. And there's 365 things that we need to stay away from, that we should not do. And that balance of doing and staying away from creates a balance in our life. It allows us to balance with the universe. Okay, so it says Nodea al beli me'aki guf ha'adam nenu ha'adam asmo matzad haguf. All right, so anyways, he says like this. He says, and no, okay, this is a big point. This is a big drum roll point. This is like, you gotta get ready for this concept. So he says, and no, the physical body of man is not his actual identity. It's merely called human flesh, as in the verse, you clothed me with skin and flesh, and covered me with bones and veins. Furthermore, it may not be applied to the flesh of man, etc. From this, we understand that man is the inner aspect, whereas the body, the flesh, is an external garment. Okay? So they're saying the concept of Adam, right? Adam is the inner aspect, which is us, right? So, like, say Mordechai. So Mordechai is not the body, it's not the flesh, it's the life force inside. This unique expression of this life force in every single person's name is an expression of that light force that we have inside of us. The body is only a garment to that light force, right? So that's what he's saying here. right? He says, from this we understand that man is the inner aspect, where the body, the flesh, is similar to a garment. The intellectual soul of man, which is his true identity, is invested in the body as long as he remains in this physical world. However, upon death, he is divested of this garment of the body and instead becomes clothed in a spiritual, rectified, and pure garment. This is, as scripture states, remove the solid garments from upon him. And he said to him, behold, I have removed your iniquity from upon you and dressed you in a pure garment. This garment is called the remnants of the rabbis. All right. So he's going through this whole process of the garments, whatever. But the point is like this. When man was in the Garden of Eden, that aspect of the complete spiritual self is pure light, it represents like every one of us. That was the thing that existed. When we fell out of that consciousness, because of our transgression, we developed this body on top of that we have now. Now, the way that we treat the body and the way that this is securing the soul. So the soul is holy, right? And so therefore, the body itself, we also treat it as something holy. And that's why when it comes to modesty, the aspect of modesty, which the world is completely against, right? Because the world is in denial that we have a soul, right? The world wants to deny that there's any soul. They like, oh, you're just flesh. You're just flesh. So you should show your flesh to everybody. As if you say I have a soul, then that means the flesh is protecting the soul, right? The flesh is protecting the soul. So therefore, this instrument, this instrument called the body that acts as a protection shield for the soul, because of my ancestors that fell out of the Garden of Eden, then I should treat it as something spiritual. And that's why I cover it, right? Now, the world who does not believe in the soul, they say, hey, you know what? The body, hey, everybody, millions of views, just look at me, millions. There's nothing sacred about me at all. It's just flesh. So it says ukemo shevush, guf ha'adam. Ooh. So he says, just as the tailor makes a garment according to the form of the person's body, so Hashem, blessed be He, made the body, which is the garment for the soul. See, you thought I was just saying it. You thought I was just saying it. He was saying this 500 years ago. He doesn't know about music videos, but he's letting you know. Okay, so which is the garment of the soul in form of the image of the soul. So he's saying that the body itself, the structure of the body is letting you know the structure of the soul. The silhouette is of the soul, right? He says that is, he made 248 organs plus 365 veins, arteries that connect them. The blood and the life force surges from the organs into organs by means of these arteries, which are similar to pipes. Once the body was formed, Hashem blew a spirit of life into it. This spirit is comprised of 248 spiritual limbs and 365 spiritual veins. And this are invested within the 248 organs and the 365 veins of the physical body. So the physical body is an expression of the soul. And then the world that we live in says, no, there's no soul. The body is the way it is just because that's the way it is. He says, with this, the organs of the soul act through the organs of the body, which are their tools, like an axe in the hand of a lumberjack. The proof of this is the fact that the physical organs only perform their function so long as the soul resides in them. The eyes, the ears, The eyes see, the ears hear, etc. However, upon the departure of the soul, the eyes dim, and all senses and the feelings vanish from the 248 organs. He says, I know he's going high, right? So he says, in this manner, the 365 spiritual veins of the soul are invested within the 365 physical veins and distributed the physical substance of blood to the 248 organs of the bodies, together with the spiritual substance within them, to sustain the 248 organs of the soul. Upon death, so what he's saying is, right? He's saying that the spiritual soul has 365 veins, right? And he says there are 365 physical veins. And these veins distribute blood to what? To the 248 organs of the body. But there's 248 spiritual organs that receive this light and feed the physical organ, right? And that organ, and those organs are all expressions of the soul. So the veins in the body are expressions of the soul. It's kind of making it trippy, right? The veins are. And then even the organs that the veins are giving to are also expressions of the soul. So he says like this, upon death, when the soul departs, the light force ceases to be drawn to the body. So the light force from this energy we receive from God, this light that we receive from God, comes into our soul, and our soul distributes it to all these different veins and organs. But when the soul leaves the body, this is what he's talking about. Upon death, when the soul departs, the life force ceases to be drawn to the body. As a result, the physical veins and organs fall apart, comprise, and become as if they never were. From this, we see that the actual identity of a person is his intellectual soul that resides within the body, which acts as a garment while the soul remains in this world. Right. So, any questions? Any questions? Just because I know he's going like to crazy places. You good?
Yes, sir. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Vedad ki akhir. Okay, so he says like this: know that the first man sinned by eating the fruit of the tree. Right, the fruit of the tree of good and the tree of knowledge, good and evil. Right, that's when he made the first sin. Both his body and soul took on the composition of good and evil. Right, we took on this aspect of this matter of contamination of the serpent that was instilled in Adam and Eve. This dross brought upon illness and disease, both spiritually and physically. This is the meaning of the verse, for on this day you eat from it and you shall surely die. Meaning the death of the soul as well as the death of the body. Right? So he's saying that when man was created, we were created in this way where our natural natures would be totally connected to the creator. Right? And so he says when we took on this concept of good and evil, right? Because there's the tree of it's the Etz Chaim, right? The tree of life, and the Eitz Das, the tree of knowledge, right? The tree of knowledge is like this. The tree of knowledge is the consciousness that we say, you know what? Today was a good day, right? The next day, certain things happen. You say, you know what? Today was a bad day. Or you wake up and you say, you know what? Oh, wow, the weather's great. Or the weather's bad, right? Whatever, right? Because I'm touching on areas that, what's wrong with saying that? What's wrong with waking up and saying this is a good day and a bad day? Because the good day and the bad day is dealing with the world on an external level, right? But if I'm dealing with the world from an internal aspect, right? That means that there's no such thing as good day and bad day, right? Because every day is a different block of correcting my soul. Every day is a different block of downloading a different aspect of my destiny. That's what every day is. So if there's a tornado on one day, Baruch Hashem. I mean, obviously, I don't want to deal with a tornado. I want to deal with other things. But if I saw the world through the lenses of my soul, I would know that I would need this, and this is why God created it. I don't like it. Okay, it doesn't feel good. It hurts, right? But that's what my soul needs. So the people of the mindset of good and bad look at the world from external qualities, based around pleasure, right? And so God says, stay away from that consciousness. Only eat from the tree of life. Because we're here for Chaim. We're here to live. We're here to have an experience where the soul can transform itself and achieve its purpose. So he's saying that those are two different consciousness that came from those foods, right? So don't eat. Go ahead. Were you saying something?
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah. So you have these two consciousness, right? You have the tree of life and you have the tree of good and bad. Tree of life, is everything is from God and everything's there to correct my soul. The tree of good and bad is not having the soul in mind. Maybe you accept you have a soul, but you don't have the soul in mind and you're judging the world on external pleasures. So that aspect, that consciousness became a block. And so that block is where the concept of, he says like this, he says, because of the contamination of the serpent is that consciousness, right? Right? It's the Yetzer Hara, right? It's the evil inclination, right? This is from the serpent. So we ingested part of that. That consciousness was part of the consciousness of defying God, right? Defying God, that consciousness was part of the ingestion of whatever the Eitz Das was, right? People say figs, different things, right? So and he says, and this brought illness into the world. There was no illness because there's a pure light. There's just pure light. Light us, distribution of the light. Light us, distribution of the light, right? Circuitry. So he said, but once you created that different consciousness, then you brought illness into the world, you brought disease in the world, and you brought death into the world. Right? And that's what Hashem was trying to warn them against. He says, you're going to bring death into the world if you eat from this. And then the serpent says, no, you're not going to die. You're not going to die. Just eat it. You're not going to die. But God said this. So this is what he's going to. He says, Unevar ma adayin hatov ve'hara'ah. Okay, so he says, Shenita Erev. So he says that I will now explain the matter of good and evil that became mixed in them. He says, examine what is written in part 3, gates 2 and 3, and you will understand what is written in this gate. Okay, thanks, Arfkan. So behold, he says, when the man sins with the tree, when the man sinned with the tree of knowledge, good and evil, he caused an admixture to permeate all the worlds. Due to this, there is nothing that does not include good and bad in it. Ve na'asa ki guf ha'adam. So he says, and before the body of man was formed, our 4 elements of the physical world have both good and evil in them. These are fire, air, water, and earth. So these are like the astrological, like the different influences, like, right? As a rotation of the earth, the sun, the moon, this whole rotation thing that we talk about. And I use the example of how when there's a full moon, the tides recede and the gravitation pull of the moon. We talked about it, right? So he's saying there's different influences that exist in this way, right? In these influences that okay, so this goes, he says, therefore the body of man was formed from the 4 elements of the physical world that have both good and bad, and good and evil in them. So he's saying that man himself, the physical, our skin, this external body, that essence of these different aspects of what makes this physical body and all the aspects. He said the physical, God used these elements to create them, which is fire, air, water, and earth. And which is interesting, those are the four major cities in Israel, right? So there's the four major holy cities, which is Jerusalem, Hebron, Sfat, and Tiberias, right? So I'm in Jerusalem, right? So this is the city known for the connection to the city is fire. Now, why it's fire, this is a whole big discussion. The air is in Sfat, which is up north, right? That's where the Arizal is buried. You know, you saw that picture in the background. And if you go there, the air there is weird. Some like weird air stuff going on. And then the water is Tiberias, right? Which is also up north, but a little bit more inland, right? Closer to Haifa. But I've been there. I've been to Tiberias. I really actually wanted to move to Tiberias. I was like, when I first came to Israel, I was like, I don't know, I just like it out here. And you have earth. And earth is Hebron, and that's where I showed you the picture where Abraham and them were buried. But there, so all these different places have different aspects and attributes. So he says, however, he said, man's body was formed from the choicest portions of these elements. Nevertheless, this choice portion also had an admixture of evil in it. So he says, man's four humors, which is white, black, red, and green. I don't know. It says humars. I'm not sure what that is. He says, were formed by the grossest portion of these elements. So I guess he's like, I don't know. The body to be healthy, these humars must be balanced. However, if there is an imbalance and in any one of them overpower the positive characteristics of the others with its negative characteristics, the result is illness and disease. If it is even more overpowering, death may result. Okay, so I'm trying to see where he's going with this. So he's explaining this aspect of the makeup of physical man, right? Because like you hear, we learn, by Rav Ashlag, the other thing, he says, when the soul comes into the body is in this place of desire to receive, right? The soul is in a place of sharing. But once the soul comes into the body, right? Once that baby is conceived, right? And that soul comes into that body, then it develops another component, right? It develops another component, right? Which is his desire to receive. So what he's explaining is why that body that creates this relationship with the soul that gives us aspects of wanting to receive for oneself, right? So he's explaining that the physical body itself, the skin that we have on, how was it made in its essence in the beginning? We're talking about Adam, the first man. And so he's saying that the different elements, the four elements that govern the world of influences, which is air, fire, earth, and water, he says that is what man, this aspect was made of. He says, but within these aspects of the skin, they have this duality of good and bad, which is the opposite of the soul. So he's explaining to it, right? And he's saying like how these different elements have to have a certain balance, and if they don't have a certain balance, it could lead to these characteristics that result in illness and disease. So in essence, he's saying that disease and these things, the root of it is consciousness, and the root of it is how our relationship with receiving light. And how that light that we're receiving, if it's being distributed to all of our limbs and our body parts. Because if there's blockages in certain parts of our consciousness, right, because of behavior and activities and actions, then from there, that part of the body also receives that blockage. So when we receive that light, the light isn't able to get there because, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I've been sinning with my hands, right? Say a person goes and steals something, right? Well, not now, but maybe later in their life, they could have issues with their hand. You know what I'm saying? It's all these different things. Every aspect of how we use the body in the wrong way creates a defilement. It creates a blockage, right? Just like, someone's like, someone's hair clogs up the sink, right? And you got to go and take the sink the bottom pipe off, and you got to go and clear out the hair because the water can't get through and it's getting stopped up and it's overflowing. That's what happens to the soul, right? That blockage that doesn't allow the water to go from the sink through the drain and the whole process because there's something blockage. When we do a sin, we create a blockage in our bones. We create a blockage in our veins, right? And that blockage that we create in our bones and our veins don't allow those parts of the body to receive light. And that's how we get injured. That's how we get sick, right? It's from these dynamics. Now, some sicknesses come because a person has done transformation and it was their time to ascend to another reality. But we're talking about most of us. Those are very high souls, right? But we're talking about most of us that are alive right now. We're alive for a reason, right? Because we're here to fix things, right? And so when we use the body in for doing wrong against God, we're damaging ourselves. And he says, and this is where this concept of death and illness comes into our particular life, right? Because we're triggering that aspect. It says, Ukevar netaver ki bakol halomot haya. So he says, as explained, the admixture of good and evil, right, permeated through all the worlds. Right, so when Adam and Eve did this, like that negative consciousness, it went everywhere. It's all over the place, even the upper spiritual worlds. This being the case, the soul of man was also affected, and it was not for this. Not if for it, it was not a new hue from the same four elements from which all the supernatural beings are formed. So he's asking the question. So let's try to understand what he's saying. So he's saying that it wasn't just the physical elements of the world that were affected by this negative consciousness that Adam and Eve brought into the world, right? When they ate from this tree, because he's trying to help us see how big of a moment that was, right? We say, oh, they ate from the tree and they fell out, okay, fine. God, why'd they do that? That's how we could see it, right? But he's saying more than that, right? He's saying that he's saying that when that moment happened, it was a supernatural darkness that created in the world that affected everything, the spiritual worlds and even the physical worlds, and even the souls that were in the heavens. That's how big the darkness was. And he says, this being the case, the soul of man was also affected. And he says, and for it was not hue from the same four elements from which all the supernatural beings were formed. So he's asking a question. He's saying, well, how could this? I guess he's asking the question on if you're saying that even a man was affected, how can you say a man was affected and he come up in the upper worlds if he's expressing God? This is what I think he's saying, right? We got to figure it out. It's called the toil. So he says these four elements are four letters of the name of God, which and blessed be his name. About this it says, from the four spirits come, O Spirit. This spirit comes in the essential soul of man for the side of goodness. However, God made everything with an opposite. So there is this aspect of man's soul that's completely expressing this aspect of pure sharing and goodness. But there is an aspect, he said, because God made everything with its opposite. So he says, just as the upper spiritual worlds are the source of goodness, the impurity, so he created a source of evil and impurity. This is called the Sitra Akra. So, right, so he created this world of this the spiritual world of holiness, and then he also made it of the other side, which is called the intolerable man, right? Again, I mean, not on by intolerable. Which is corruptible, incorruptible. I don't know. He says, all right. He says it is made up of 4 sources of destruction and 4 indicators of plagues, which are its 4 bad elements. So he's explaining this dark side that's also created. So what he's doing now, what Chaim Vital now is giving you the landscape. He's giving you the landscape of the game, of the structure of the body. He's giving you the structure of the the universe around you, and then now he's going into how impurities came into the world, how negativities, and he's going all the way from the beginning of the beginning of the beginning, right? He's going all the way from the beginning of the beginning, and he's starting there, right? And so that's important. So he's giving you the overall map, so when you go in, you know what's going on around you, right? Okay. So he says the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, is drawn to man. He says if this soul overpowers the good soul, destruction and plagues and spiritual illness befall it. Moreover, if if it is too overpowering, it can cause spiritual death. God forbid. Okay, so he's saying like there's this part of us that is totally connected to the purest aspects of Hashem. But then there's other influences in this world, right? Like this in the spiritual world that affects the soul, right? That is there. It also has a connection to us. And so the name of the game is to be able to feed the spiritual soul and to stay away from the animal soul, right? Because you don't want to call it evil. Nothing about it is evil, right? But it's just saying the aspect of the animal soul, the soul of lower consciousness that wants to receive just for itself. The soul that just wants to for itself. It's like the child when it's a kid, comes home and he wants to eat something, and you're making his favorite food for dinner, but he doesn't care because he just wants to eat right now. He wants some cookies right now. But your food's coming. You're not going to have an appetite. But he wants the food right now. That's that aspect of that level of development that's not connected to the big picture, right? And so some people, God forbid, by doing sin, stay at that level of consciousness. They may grow, they may get older and have gray hair and this, but they never left that consciousness of the selfish frame of reference, right? And the only way to get out of that is by feeding the side of us that's holy and good, right? By putting lumber in that furnace, right? Not in the other side. You want if that other furnace burns, is going to limit your ability to connect and achieve your ultimate purpose. So let's look at this. So I want to see where we're at. Okay, so let's stop here. We're at 11. We're at 11. Yeah. Yeah, so we're here, and so we're stopping at 11 in this concept of the creation of the ultimate challenge of man, right? Because that's what we're discussing here. We're saying, hey, this is how the body and soul work together. Okay, here's creation. Body and soul, that's you, right? Okay, fine. Because what he's trying to show us is what happens, right? When we make a sin, right? When we go against when we negate doing one of the 248, or when we negate ourselves for when we participate and not negate ourselves in the 365. And he's saying actually what in essence the soul itself is made up of these parts, right? And so when you look at a body and you see all the veins and the organs and the tissues, all that, that's all expression of soul, which is like a crazy concept, right? So there's the spiritual soul, and then there's the manifestation around it, which is the body, right? So how did these things come together? They came together because the first man was just the spiritual soul, his natural self. But when he fell, when he went against God, right, he transgressed, he had to take on this thing called body, right, to protect the soul because he's no longer in this protected reality of Garden of Eden, right? He's in a newer place where he's not as safe, he's not protected. Now he's saying that this physical body that we have is made up of the substances of the physical world that were contaminated by by what they did, right? Because everything was affected. Not only the physical world, the spiritual world was also affected from what Adam and Eve did, right? So this body that we have, which is spiritual, because it's protecting the soul, still is not connected. It's part of somewhat of the corruption. So that means your body can lie to your spiritual soul. Your body can lie to you. Your body can say, I have this desire, but it may have nothing to do with God's will. And so that's where you have to use your free will. My body has this desire, but this is only fulfilling this desire is only going to bring me destruction. I know the music video says differently. I know television is saying differently. They say it doesn't care because they don't believe I have a soul. So if I don't have a soul, it doesn't matter what I do to the body. Who cares? You know, just as long as you can break it, right? You know, you're okay. You're walking around. You're breathing. So the point is to say that he's explaining to us that this body is made out of this, right? And he says, and so that's one dilemma. But then we have another dilemma, which is when the Eitz Hadas, that consciousness, that corrupted consciousness of the Nachash, is also permeated on us in the spiritual worlds too. And it has the ability to affect the soul. So as much as God gave us a spiritual, holy soul, there's an aspect of creation which is also spiritual that is also to a degree attached to us because of what happened in the beginning of creation. And so he's starting this conversation saying when you feed that the dark side of yourself, it could become so strong that it overpowers your spiritual self and you're wiped out. You spiritually become dead. You're a zombie. You're gone. You're out. Game over. Right? And so this dynamic of what we're learning is the concept of learning how we, or the severity or what the functionality is of, because the world is telling us to do things completely against God. Like, right? The world is completely telling us to do things against God. Every television show, every concept, you know, look at Shedeur Sanders. He got 50 gold chains on. Why? Why do you need 50 gold chains? Why not feed 50,000 kids with that same money? Shedeur Sanders just fed 50,000 kids in sub-Saharan Africa. He fed 50,000 kids in Asia or India, whatever. Why is that not swag? Why is that the same money he spent for that chain that fed all those kids would be the very thing that gets him into Olam Haba? But again, if you don't have a soul, these things don't matter. So anyways, all right. So any thoughts, reflections on this?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, because this is a very profound teaching, and you know, it just makes me think about the fact that, and it kind of goes back to your early discussion, you know, your early discussion about different societies, and you know, you have the oppressor, and then you have those that's being oppressed. You have those that's going to the lynching parties and so forth. And you're like, you know, and what would make them do that? And I think that what it is we it's like we all are in an environment to be proven or to be tested, right? And so what happens is that when you are given the opportunity to rule or to have dominion or to be exposed to certain things. You with that opportunity, you have an opportunity to do good or to do evil. And so basically when you enter into this system, whatever is really in you is in you to actually to be exposed. The test is there to expose what's in you so that you can see and the world can see where the disconnect is within your soul and your body. So if with all of the anger and the rage and the frustration that that these people were having when they were going to those lynching parties, when they had everything, they had the power, they had the wealth, they had everything, but they gotta release this frustration because they don't have a connection with God. And because they don't have because they don't have this connection with God, their soul knows it. Their soul is angry. Their soul is frustrated, and so it has to manifest out some way somehow. And it just gives you the appropriate, or not the appropriate, but it just gives you the opportunity to express this anger, this sin, or this wicked behavior. All right. So when we put this in reverse and we look at it with the understanding that we have now, and we understand that these behaviors, and that when you think about our soul and how our soul is connected to our bodies, and that our bodies are these garments, that what we do is a manifestation of what our soul is expressing and what is actually in us. But the key is identifying that animal soul, that animal side of ourselves, and saying, "No, this is not true. This is not what the truth is." For me to go and buy a gold chain versus me going to feed someone. Um,
You broke up a little bit.
You hear me?
Yeah. You good?
Okay. Yeah, but to do that, it's still a decision. It's all about a decision. And so with the mitzvot, what they allow us to do is they create in us the right connections to make the right decisions when we get into those situations. One of the aspects that we are facing is as Israel, as Jews, when we are back as a ruling power in the world, what spirit, what soul are we going to listen to? What soul are we going to listen to? Are we going to also be brutal? Are we also going to be are we going to be a people that are very spiritual people, that are righteous people? And that's where the mitzvos come in. And that's when the days of Mashiach comes in, that we will be able to, that everyone will be tried basically and be purified in that aspect. And so that's where this teaching kind of brings my mind.
Yeah, no, and that's a very good. First of all, it's profound what you said, and you really brought out a really good point, and it's something to touch on. And this is the danger and the corruption of the thinking that exists specifically in Christianity, right? Because if you say that someone else came and died for your sins, right? Like say that maybe there's people, some people believe this. You're saying that, like, not only that, let's go to another point. No, one, you're saying that this person died for your sins, and then now you're saying there's a new covenant, right? There's this new covenant now, Isaiah, 49, these verses, there's a new covenant. Now, in order for that to exist, right, the Torah starts with Bereshis bara Elohim et hashmayim ha'aretz. Bara means to create, right? But it's also in the frame of berit, right? Covenant. So the first covenant that was created was between the heavens and the earth, right? And then later it describes, other relationships, right? But the point is to say that whole system of the soul receiving light, the soul receiving this light in the different parts of the body, this aspect of the soul and the body being connected to the Shekhinah, which also has 613 parts. Then you bring in the mitzvot, and then that has 613 parts that are all corresponding to these various connecting points. It allows us, our soul, our body, and the light force of the Creator from the Shekhinah to all be unified, right? That's what this whole thing is, right? Unification, Yehudim, right? So my point is the same. So when people come along and they say, "Oh, well, there's a new covenant, there's a new thing," it's that you just wiped out that whole system. Now you have to show me a new system. Now you got to show a new system. If you're saying that this is out and this new thing is in, you have to show a different system. You have to show how the system of the human being works, as it relates to nature, as it relates to the light force of the Creator. The whole thing, it goes, you're throwing the whole thing out. You're throwing out that my dynamic is connected to this. How else could you do it other than the 613 mitzvahs? And then if you're in that frame that your elevation is based off of your work and your change and your thing, and you go to the highest concept of who you are in this lifetime, God willing. What is JC, Moses, Muhammad, or any of these people, Buddha, any of these people, what they got to do with that experience? Well, this person's a Messiah, or this person's the last prophet. Okay, what does that have to do with my spiritual elevation? Because I have to correct myself. None of these people could do anything. None of the prophets delivered the message. I can read it, I could get strength from it to obey God. But I have to obey the Creator. So why are you distracting me with these people? Yes, Moses was the highest prophet. Great. We don't even know he's buried at for that reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, people be living there, if you imagine, right? But the point is just saying that, like, that concept is so destructive that you just removed a whole billions of people out of the whole aspect of I am taking accountability for my behavior and I'm transforming myself and I'm connecting to the light force of the Creator. You don't have to be Jewish for that. That's what we should be teaching people as Jews, right? That's why you can't have knowledge over here. They got the Masons, they got this knowledge, but then they go and do their Nation of Islam and their black churches and they go and collect a bunch of money, from these people and that whole thing. It's like, come on, bro. And then they wonder why, why ain't no change? Look at the premise of what the whole thing was created on. It's just a hustle. You know what I'm saying? So it's just saying, so there's no consciousness there. So when you put these new things, you have to say, what's the mechanism? How does it work? Oh, well, we got the New Testament now. Okay, so fine. Okay, you got New Testament. Okay, so how does it work? How does it work? You're saying there's no more levels of learning anymore? I mean, are those levels in these books? Those levels are there? Okay, we could pull it out. We could get the coordinates of this new system. Because I can look inside of the Torah and I can see the system, right? Just based off of that in the calendar. Okay, there's more depth, and God, we have the sages to help us. But the point is just saying, blessed memory. But the point is just saying, like, we have a whole system. So we are talking about a system that goes all the way down to the physical molecule, to the highest planet, to the highest world, are all connected through my thinking process. Now you want to say that doesn't exist anymore? And we should live this way? First of all, what are they doing in church? Okay, they're singing, I get it. They're singing, I get it. They're singing, I get it. Singing is holy, I get it. But where's the transformation? Where's the fighting of the Yetzer Hara? Where's the injection of light? Shabbat, you need light. You get an injection of light. Why? To battle that dark side all week. You're taking that away. And then some people, they try to get sophisticated. Well, I disagree with the church. But JC was, he was Jewish. He was in Jerusalem. I have this guy stalking me right now on the same concept. This guy sends me a message. He says, hey, the things you're talking about with the soul, it ain't true. It ain't in the Torah, all this stuff, the world, the soul, all this, none of it's in the Torah. And I'm like, all right, so did Abraham follow the Torah? Did Noah follow the Torah? I mean, he's like, what do you mean Torah? What do you mean? The 5 books of Moses? So is the Tanakh the Torah? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? It's just saying, like, it's just like, what are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? And so, and he's like really debating me about it, right? And it's just like, bro, first of all, no one's asked you to have to believe in any of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, okay, do your thing. You believe it. You got your what do they call it? The New Testament or the Good News, the Book of Good News, whatever they call it. So, okay, you got it. If you're getting light from that, go ahead. That's what your soul needs. I only can mess with prophets, and I can learn people who've also dedicated their lives to studying the prophets, right? And connecting to the prophets and emulating the prophets, right? I can learn from them too. So that's where my connection's at. There's someone else's connections. I need Rosh Hashanah. I need Yom Kippur. I'm sorry. You don't need it. All right, cool. But that's not the way they did it, in the times of the Bible. Okay, bro, I get it. But what's that got to do? Good, go ahead.
To just add to that, first of all, the New Testament concept through the vein of Christianity is a warfare tactic, and people don't, that's a whole lecture in of itself. However, but based off of what this person is saying, the idea is that the whole mindset, like, what is the system? That there is no system. That's the whole purpose. It's complete chaos. It's literally complete chaos. That's why there's so many denominations, okay, which divides the nations, right? The whole concept of houses being divided this is about division. There's no system. So you don't need a system. Well, put it like this: you don't need you don't have to have a righteous system. A righteous system will not divide a house. So the system in of itself, if you say, okay, so what is the system? What am I supposed to do on Sunday morning? What am I supposed to do? How is this holiness? Okay. And when you really move to that dynamic, everything is based upon you waiting for something to show up. You're waiting.
Just on that point, I just want to just make one point on that. Who even gave you permission to do something on a Sunday? Where did you even get that permission from?
Well, don't get me started on that one, because it's a reason for that, but it's not biblical. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I know Council of Nicaea, the whole thing, but I'm just saying the point. I'm just saying. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the idea is that there is no structure. Matter of fact, the basis of, okay, hey, how do we raise children? What is the responsibility for children? You'd be surprised how many people I talk to on a day-to-day basis, and when they ask us about how to homeschool their children and whatnot, and then when I tell them, they say, well, why, can you tell me why should we homeschool our children? I said, man, wait a minute, hold on, listen. I say there's a biblical principle behind it. It's biblical. And they say, well, what do you mean biblical? And I give them the Shema. I say, listen, you're supposed to be talking to your children about God's commandments when they rise up, when they lie down, and when they walk by the way, when we're all throughout the day. That's homeschooling. That's their education, is God's word. And that's the technology. If your child knows God's word, then their life is going to be a whole lot better than it would if they don't. So the idea is that this is the practice. This is why we pray. This is the 18 blessings, and this is why the 19th blessing was added. This is why we do what we do. This is the reason. Okay, why do you do that? Why do you have an Easter bunny? Why do you like what? And it's very sad. It's very unfortunate, because it also, Christianity promotes a lack of education. It does not. It's going good. Good to see you. Yes, sir. It does not promote education and learning. That's why many don't know their Bibles. They don't even read it. They just go and hear a sermon, and a lot of ministers don't know it, don't know the Bible. And this is I had one of my professors one time, and he was he was like a mentor, minister in the ministry, and I asked him one day, I was talking to him, went to his office, and I said, hey, listen, I'm reading through the prophets, and I'm like, man, there's a lot about the last days that I really think we need to be concerned with. And he told me, he said, listen, why are you reading the prophets? Now, we're both ministers. And he said, why are you reading the prophets? And I said, man, we supposed to, this the prophets. These are the prophets. This is where everything is built off of, right? He said, we don't have to worry about the prophets because we're going to be raptured up out of here. We ain't got to worry about those days. That never sat well with me. That I could never roll with that ever. And I just stopped going to him for counseling and learning. I just stopped. And so, because I'm not going to start reading the prophets, but this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a lack of a system that says, hey, you don't have to learn. You're just waiting. You're waiting on a deliverer. You're waiting on a deliverer, but your children are wayward. Okay, it's just there's adultery at a high rate, divorce at a high rate. There's drug abuse, there's suicides, there's all these things going on, but you're waiting. But the answers are right here in the Torah. They're right here.
Yeah, yeah. But on that point, so it's a very, very important point. So the thing is, there has to be a distinction between a person who loves the Bible and a person who's a Jew, right? And the difference is that a person can love the Bible and aspire to certain values and virtues and just be like a really outstanding person, right? Being a Jew is accepting the traditions and the leadership that currently exists in the collective body of Judaism. Meaning that, so the sources that we learn, the scholars that we learn, the aspirations that we have are not there because they're so amazing. I mean, obviously they are, but it's not for that reason. It's for the sake of, like when you say raising children, right? So raising children, like it's so many details to it, right? Like it's so many details from a halakhic perspective. And not just that, but just even in terms of like building the outlook, all these different details, right? So by us, we would say, okay, we will want to envelop ourselves into all the other Jews that came before us and currently exist to get ourselves connected to contemporary thought and older thought, right, of other Jews, right? And so like that's would be our basis. It's not, the Bible's great, you know what I mean? But I mean, what are you going to do with the Bible? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, yes, there's some great things you could extrapolate, you could maybe derive meaning, but in terms of having every aspect of your life to be pure, right? Because those people in the church, the goal is not a frame of liberating the soul by weakening the body. You know what I'm saying? Like the frame of soul is not there. So when you say there's no structure, what do you need a structure for? You just need order, right? You come at this time, you do these things, that, hey, you're blessed, you go home, right? But the thing by us, this is not about, religious traditions or even the greatness of even the Bible. This is how we're made physically, right? We're physically made this way. So it's like, so the things that and that's why they're very specific about a Jew, right? Because a Jew is physically is spiritual essence is different than the other nations, right? So the other nations, okay, but I was just saying the other nations, they could definitely have a connection to the wisdom of the Torah and this and whatever. That's why the New Testament and the Old Testament really wouldn't matter to a non-Jew, right? Because by them, they're not connecting to light, either one of them, right? If there was light by the Old Testament, a lot of you know what I mean. Like I mean, what's there? You know what I'm saying? And so that 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 understanding is really important, right? Because it's like, yes, there's people, and then there's Jews, right? Jews is go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I will say, Chief Rabbi, that
Mm.
when you talked about the good and bad and
Yep.
so forth, and that it is like the wrong type of conscious for a Jew to have, like, it's a good day, it's a bad day, and so forth or whatnot, because we understand that a lot of these things may actually manifest in a Jew's life. However, when we just look at that external thing, it really does not keep us in that, I guess, the tree of life. Because a Jew can go through some of the same things or hardships that many other people may experience, and it's not necessarily based off of their religious practice or lack of religious practice or anything like that. But as a Jew, we don't see it the way others look at it. We look at things from, like, we're talking about the soul and the reconnecting our soul, doing the teshuva back to Hashem. So when you said about the biblical, just being, I'm just trying to get a clear understanding as far as like making this connection as you're bringing out about how a Jew sees things.
Well, yeah. What I'm saying in terms of that aspect, I'm saying that like for example, if you look at I just wrote about this. You look at universities, right? So people go to universities, right? And there's a lot of information in universities that create a society that's very, very functional, right? You have streets, you have roads, you have order, you have police, you have restaurants, all these types of things, right? So you have a society. But the point is saying that the ideas that built those universities and those colleges are ideas that deny the human experience of having a soul. And when you deny the fact that humans have a soul, that means that the trajectory of how you are cultivating thought is from not the internal out, but rather the outside in, right? And so when you create that mode of thinking amongst millions and millions of people, this is the functional society that they're operating in, right? And so in that society, you're going to have racism, you're going to have prejudice, you're going to have divisiveness, you're going to have these things because the internal aspect, which is unique, right, which cannot be equated through natural sciences, right? But nevertheless guides each individual. That aspect, you cannot control that. You cannot control a person who's pursuing the desires of his soul. But if a person has the desires for the external components, right, then you can control that, right? If a person is only seeking pleasure because they have no understanding that they have a soul, then you could create a situation and say, hey, it's like the thing with the hamsters on the wheel, right? Like you can have them there and you just like hold a carrot outside and they just keep running towards it, right? So everybody, you want people to go in a certain way. You want women to leave the home and join the corporation, so you create the feminist movement, right? Because a woman's not thinking about what her soul needs, right? It's just you're presented with images and ideas and concepts that say, hey, you know what? Leave the home and go and join corporate America and be like a man, right? 50 years later, no one's having kids, right? But it felt good, right? We were liberated. We were clear. So the point is saying, so that is society. Now, what we're saying here over here on the biblical side, right? I'm saying that the 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 books themselves that we learn from, the books in themselves are technology, right? We're not reading like stories, right? Like you even have like the Apocrypha, right? Which is like a whole thing in itself, right? But we don't hold by it, right? Some good stuff in there. It's juicy, right? Well written, whatever. Maybe it even is, who knows? But either way, as a community, we don't hold by it, right? And so the focus is that the whole system is built around the spiritual technology, meaning that when you read open a Shulchan Aruch, right, and there's a particular halakha, okay, this is the halakha. But how did they get to that place? What was the mechanisms that they used to get to the place to have that is what God's will could be in this particular area that we're trying to fulfill a commandment? What was the mechanism? What did they go through? Right? And when you see the step by step of where it derives in the Torah, how it was built out from the Torah, how was it explained in the Mishnah, how it was discussed in the Gemara, and then how the Rishonim, the later generations, took that information and then moved it into the frame of law, right? And then it even became more and more specified as time went on. But the point is just saying that that umbilical cord from God's will through the Torah, through my physical action, is a complete chain, right? So when you bring in other books, right, that are not connected to that, that were written by people we don't even really even know who they were, right? And even if we did, it's irrelevant because none of them claim to be prophets. None of them had Haruch Kodesh. None of them brought us closer to what already existed, right? They're claiming something completely new, which has to be, by our perspective, completely false. Either they're right and we're false, or we're right and they're false. It's one of the two. There's no middle ground, right? So what we're saying is that so that idea that can connect my soul to light, because that's what this conversation is about, right? The conversation is about, does this bring my soul to energy from God? And if it does, how so? I shouldn't ask that question. I shouldn't know. I should just believe. That's it. Just believe. Just come to church on a Sunday. Sunday's Yom Rishon. It's the first day of the week. So what was the rest time? On a spiritual calendar, right? Not the Roman calendar, right? On the spiritual calendar, 7 days, right? The seventh day we rest. For some reason, God said on this day we should all rest. That wasn't just for the Jewish people; that was humanity. So why are these people resting on? Why are these people doing this spiritual activity on Yom Rishon? Where's the light at there? Why not just do it on Tuesday? Why Sunday? Just do it on Tuesday. What's the difference? You know, so it's just saying that.
Okay. So we're basically like we're looking at the technology and everything that is holding by the books that our sages have written to help us to be able to connect back to what we lost in the Garden of Eden.
Basically, you could trace everything to correcting that moment. Everything, you could trace everything at the end of the day. Like most of the Kabbalah that's written traces everything back to the Garden of Eden. Everything comes from that original darkness that came into the world, that affected it, that affected mankind, and it's affected us differently in every generation. And there's been messengers that God has sent to us saying, hey, you guys, stop letting the animal soul dominate you. You have to go and feed the positive, the holy soul, right? You got to feed that part. And these are the things that you should do. Don't do this, don't do that. Throughout history, right? This guy, that guy, these guys, that guy, this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's been the message. Don't feed the animal soul, do this. Restrict evil, do good, right? And so that's it, right? So the Jewish dynamic is saying, well, we got to go and tell the world this, right? We got to figure out a way to tell the whole world that they could just do these actions and they feed this part of themselves and they create a completely different reality for themselves than they would if they do these things. So in order for us to be those people, you know, I'm not saying we're living up to it every day and it's not a struggle and this whole thing. I mean, you can read the Torah, you can read the Tanakh and see it hasn't been an easy road for us. But nevertheless, that's the task, right? So we have to deal with new ideas, people coming saying, hey, you know what? It used to be you guys. Now it's us. Yeah. You got to join us. Yeah, quit everything you guys. Yeah, that whole thing's over. Yeah, you're here now. And you got people that come after them and say, you know, those other guys, they were okay for a little bit. Now you got to come over here with us, right? And so this is what the Jews dealing with. The Jews has to deal with the fact that he has a walk on Shabbos, and you see the non-Jew driving down the street in a convertible, wearing, scandalous clothing, right? Having the time of their life. But if I did that, not that I'm just breaking the law, but I'm sentencing my soul to death. I'm cutting my soul off. Now we understand what it means to have to be cut off from God. Certain sins are correct, right? They'll cut you off from God. So it's just saying. So the Jew has to look at that reality. Everything that I'm supposed to do, the whole world does the opposite. And then you have people come along and say, well, you know what? I'm going to do things Jewish-like. The conservative, reform, reconstructionist, even modern Orthodox, they come along and say, hey, you know what? It's Jewish-like. It's not so by the rules and the law. Bro, it ain't got nothing to do with the rules and the laws. We're talking about your physical, the Jewish body being fed light. Either it's a farce or it's real. Oh, but that's just the deep sages. That's the Kabbalah. I'm not supposed to learn that. It doesn't matter if you're learning it or not. Does the soul receive light from the Creator? Does the soul distribute that light to the different body parts of the human body? Yes or no? So therefore, the 613 mitzvahs matter. It's not about what you like, what you want to do, want to fit in. Oh, you want to dress like the non-Jew. Okay, I get it. You want to go on the vacations like them. Okay, you don't want to be so hardcore. You don't want to think about these things. You kept a commit. You did the mitzvah. I said hamotzi on Shabbat night. Anyways, the point is just saying, so that's where we're at. And so I'm saying, like, the whole Christianity thing, the whole church, the whole JC thing, none of that stuff is connected to light. And I'm saying the same thing, even, there are aspects inside of Islam, like, they believe in circumcision, they believe in prayer, they believe in, the world to come, they do believe in the prophets, they got their distortions, but the point is saying the sages say that if I was in a Muslim neighborhood and there was no synagogue, I could go and pray inside of a masjid, right? But I couldn't pray inside of a church. See what I'm saying? Why?
Thank you. Toda.
You got that, right? Anyways, all right. So we'll continue on. I'm hammering on this because it's all about that Mount Sinai consciousness, and you just think about what the ancestors had to let go of, right? Because they lived in such a different reality, right? And they had lives, and so they had to let go of so much to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. So so for me, it's just, hey, if we could achieve just humanness, humanness, and I'm saying this to everybody. I'm having this conversation with the Indians. I'm having this conversation with the Nigerians. I'm having these conversations with African Americans. So it's going around. I have smoke for everybody. You know what I mean? But the point is just saying that, getting to that ultimate place where it's like, I'm a human, and this is what the world says. So let me interact on that basis. I'm a human. I'm already who I am. Okay. So now when I walk into this room, all these other people have all these like crazy ideas or whatnot, and so I want to be able to interact with those crazy ideas, but not lose the fact that I'm a human. And that's all we're trying to get to.